Hello and welcome to Odds on Premier League Match Day 2. We are back with Tom Rennie to analyze everything that is going to happen in England in this Match Day 2. Tom Rennie, after seeing the first game, what did you like the most? Perhaps Reinders?
Yeah, I thought Reinders was incredible. I think we may have undervalued Man City. If you can bring on, 𝐸𝐴𝐵𝐻𝐿𝐾𝐼 for the last 20 minutes and he scores with his first touch or whatever, I think that's pretty impressive. I was quite high on Tottenham as well, though they played Burnley, so we'll see how that goes. But I think they look quite good. Sunderland played well, though I still think they'll be bottom 5 come the end of the season. I think West Ham were kind of tragic because they still don't think a midfield needs to be able to run in the Premier League. And also, I think you saw with Manchester United, they've got the same problem as West Ham have got. If you don't have athletes, you don't win Premier League games. So really interesting. Not many surprises. And I think 7 or 8 of our bets came in, plus our safe bet last week. So I'm reasonably happy for a first week, which is usually quite chaotic.
It's important to have a goalkeeper if you want to win games. Usually a goalkeeper and a number 9 are kind of very important. This is what we call football. So recruiters go out in the market and sign some interesting players. Actually, there are, of course, some stories like Isaac, like Eze in this transfer window. Still 10 days till the closure. So guys, stay tuned. Of course, tell me what you think about the games. Don't forget to press the like, subscribe. Let's go on now with the show. And first game is on a Friday evening. Strange. Tom, are you going to the stadium on a Friday evening, 8 p.m. to watch West Ham Chelsea?
I mean, I did have a ticket for this game. Then I watched West Ham Sunderland and gave my ticket back. So no, I would much rather sit indoors with my wife watching a movie, or maybe just scratch my backside than watch my team get mullered by Chelsea. So no, I'm not going.
Yeah, actually, I chose to watch Chelsea Crystal Palace, and I had to switch and put some Batman movie because it was so boring. So 2 of the teams that actually disappointed us in the first match day, West Ham losing to Sunderland 3-0, a lot of problems in the aerial balls, and Chelsea really boring. We kind of expected Chelsea to start slow since they didn't have holidays, of course, after winning the Club World Cup. We saw, for instance, some minutes, 𝗛𝗏𝗏. We also saw 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐿 from the start, but no spark in Chelsea. I guess it's normal, Tom. We also saw Real Madrid or PSG, for instance, struggling in their first games this season.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Chelsea at some point will have a burnout this season. I don't think that's what we saw last week. They were up against a Crystal Palace team who, I mean, their last 10 games, Crystal Palace, back end of last season, start of this, are incredible, right? They've beaten everyone, including winning the FA Cup in that time. So, look, they're a very, very good team. So I don't think any great disrespect goes into that game for Chelsea. This is different. West Ham are so bad. And I was really shocked by it. And maybe I have my own bias because I want them to do well. And I readily admit to that. But I do think that they were surprisingly bad second half against Sunderland. First half went exactly as we predicted. Very slow, 1 or 2 half chances, but nothing particularly significant. And second half, that's where you expect the Premier League team to kind of kick into gear against the side just promoted with 7 players who've just met. And West Ham simply did not. And they've got problems all over the field. They've had the same problems now for like 8 months. And this manager has not fixed them. The hierarchy at the club with the transfers, David Sullivan, has not fixed them. The midfield is a joke. To have Guido Rodriguez and James Ward-Prowse in central midfield, which I didn't see coming. I didn't see it coming. To have that in 2025 is insane. They can't run. You can't have midfielders in the Premier League who cannot run. Maybe that'd be a good midfield for lower mid-table La Liga. Maybe that would be a good midfield for battling against relegation Serie A. Yeah, maybe. Premier League? Not a chance in hell that should be your midfield. It's an insane thing to have done. And he's got options, Potter. Look, we can discuss the quality of them. I think Edson Alvarez is still there. They want red because he can't run, but fine. Thomas Souček can run slowly, but he can run. They've got Dan Potts, who's a youth academy product, who's 21, who was great for Wycombe in the championship. I'm sure he can run. And they chose Guido Rodriguez, who we all thought had been sold. And James Ward-Prowse. So, like, kind of insane decisions there, I think, made by Graham Potter last week, which really cost his team. And I think the rest of it too, like defensively, they've got 3 centre-halves, none can defend, which we saw them losing. They lost it's like 8 of 13 aerial battles in their own penalty area last week. That's a disgrace in the Premier League. That's nowhere near good enough. And up front, 𝗀𝗀𝗀's finished. I'm sorry, let's finish with 𝗀𝗀𝗀. He can't. He's done. He's absolutely done. He massive injury last season. I don't know what he was before, but no business being in the Premier League at all. Stealing and living, the guy. So look, West Ham have got all sorts of problems. That a full week to fix it, full summer to fix it. Going into Friday, they have not fixed their totally dead midfield, and with that, that's why they lose against Chelsea this weekend. Chelsea, look, last week I think creativity was a problem. Cole Palmer struggled at points against Crystal Palace's midfield, which is the shape West Ham will play, by the way, but they'll do it significantly worse. I think as well, they were pushed back by Eza and they were pushed back by Sarr at points, and Chalobah and Achimpong at centre-half. That is a pairing you can get at if you're West Ham or if you were Crystal Palace, which they did at points last week. But it was a real cancel each other out game last week for Chelsea. I think we need more from Gittins, a lot more from Neto, more from João Pedro, had a tough game. And Liam Delap, I think, came on and struggled as well. So maybe it was the fact it's their first really proper competitive game for a real long time, Chelsea. And I would throw the Club World Cup in there as well. Crystal Palace were tougher than any opponent Chelsea faced all summer. And of course, faced in their 2 kind of pre-season games in 3 days as well. That was their toughest game since last season. And they really did struggle to create. And I think that's my only doubt about Chelsea this year. They've got some really good players. I would say 2 world-class players in Palmer and 𝗀𝗀𝗀. Some really promising, exciting, pacey attackers. Gittins, Neto, I've mentioned. João Pedro and Delap, I've mentioned. But there's others. 𝗛𝗏𝗏 came on, made a difference. So it's about making that work and getting that balance. It wasn't there last week, but I expect it to be there this week. West Ham have players who simply cannot move. The only way they beat Chelsea is to get physical, rough them up, long balls, low block, do all that. The trouble is, he won't play Tomáš Souček. He'll play 5'0" Guido Rodriguez, and they'll try and pass their way through Chelsea, which is dumb. So go for the Chelsea win. Obviously, significant Chelsea win here as well. 1.7 is the first bet. Then look at some handicaps here. 2 years ago, West Ham won this game, I think 3-1. But last year I was with you, I think the day after. And that's when I knew, I think day 2 of the season, 𝗏𝗏𝗏 was going to be diabolical. Because they got 3-0 in the first half, I think it was. And it could have been worse. Same again this year. Go minus 1.5 at 2.75. A spread bet of 1-0, 2-0, and 3-0 comes in at a really generous 3.5. And 3-0 on its own, as it was last year, is 13. Chelsea will hammer this slow, useless West Ham. And hopefully, West Ham will realise the problems I've been highlighting to you for a year. And I don't know, try and fix them. Give it a whirl.
Well, everyone agrees, actually. A spread -1 on Chelsea. Chelsea over 1.5 goals. Chelsea to win and over 1.5 goals. So this is it. Chelsea to win 2-3-0 in East London. Tom is not optimistic at all about the Hammers in this start of the season, at least. And now we have the game of the weekend, the Man City Tottenham in Guardiola times. Actually, this has been a great football game, and Tottenham probably is the team that can or have beaten more times Man City with Guardiola on the bench. Actually, in the head-to-head in the last 8 years is really toe-to-toe. Last season, remember, Tottenham won here 4-0. And we are seeing a good Tottenham in this start of the season, apart from the European Super Cup, very easy win against Burnley. It was also positive to see Richarlison scoring a brace. And on the other hand, as you mentioned at the beginning, Man City performing much better than what we expected. Thrash Wolves 4-0. It was also very easy. Wolves left so much space on their back. But there is a name that I wanted to highlight also, Reinders. We knew he was a great player playing for Milan and for the Netherlands, and it looks like he's a perfect fit for this Man City.
Yeah, I spoke to Gianni Reinders in like April time before the Coppa Italia, and you know, he was really confident. Milan were playing sort of poorly at the time, but he was a real bright spark. But I never saw him making the move to Man City. Like we spoke about what he brought to Milan, and we spoke about the energy he brought, and we spoke about the multiple jobs that he was able to bring, and the things he was able to do. But I never saw this performance for Milan back end of last season. Look, I watched the Coppa Italia final, a few other bits and bobs, not as much as our experts who cover, you know, Daniele and whatnot, covering Serie A. But I do think that what he brought last week was so missing from City last season. And it was almost what De Bruyne brought, right? Like, it wasn't Kevin De Bruyne, but it was like being all action. It was being that end. It was being that end. It was creative. It was running. It was deciding to pass early unexpectedly. It was everything that this team so desperately needed in the absence of Kevin De Bruyne for essentially 2 seasons. So absolutely incredible performance. Whether he's going to be a star player across the season in a big game, we'll find out together. But certainly he's got the personality, he's got the CV, and he's had a fantastic start. So really fascinated to see how he gets on in this game. I think the rest of the team, there was a few problems. I think Jeremy Doku flat to deceive. I like Oscar Bob, but I wonder if Reinders isn't amazing. Would Bob be amazing? And maybe he will, but I'm intrigued to see that. Haaland was great last week, obviously, but they gave him so much space. I mean, 𝐿𝐵𝗵𝗲𝗀, and I think it was Doherty last week. Just let him have so much room to convert the chances. So, you know, look really good going forward. And, of course, you can bring on 𝗀𝐿𝐴. I thought 𝐻𝐸 played well against Wolves last week. My only doubts maybe would be if they get pushed back. Is Rico Lewis a very good fullback? Is John Stone still a good defender? And James Trafford played fine. Ederson's going. He's going to be number 1, it would seem. We'll see how that plays out. You know, last time in the Premier League, James Trafford was overwhelmed. In the Championship last season, he was incredible. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. But lots of positives about Man City last week. And maybe we have undervalued them because they can bring on Omar Marmoush, Ryan 𝗀𝐿𝐴, Matheus Nunes from the bench. 150 million. Just like that. Bring them on. So, like, really good players. In terms of Tottenham, you know, I thought they were great last week. That was excellent from Tottenham Hotspur. They shuffle up their game so well. Now they're under Thomas Frank. I know it's just 2 games, but they will shuffle up their game. There's long throws. There's early crosses. There's great movement between Johnson, Kudus, and Richarlison, who was the outstanding player on the field, I thought. So I was quite surprised to see some links this morning of him maybe leaving the club before the transfer window closes. He looks to be more suited to playing Thomas Frank's football than maybe Dominic Solanke does, who might get pushed out to the wing at times this season, which has not been his role for a while in a kind of low block, press high role. So we'll see how that plays out. I think midfield still got problems. I wouldn't necessarily back Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, and Sarr in this game if that was the trio. I think 𝐿𝐴 Paulinho, if fit, comes in. I think if Bentancur's fit comes in, who's been exceptional in this game at times over the years. No doubts about defence and the goalkeeper. So really intriguing, this one. I think it will be a low block. I think it will be somewhat attritional. And I think if City are able to get out of the first kind of 10 minutes, 15 minutes with the lead, I think they go on to win quite comfortably. I don't see a repeat of the 4-0. And to be fair, no one saw that last season. But I do think it'll be quite tight. That was incredible. Absolutely incredible. I think it's going to be more like the game in February time, which was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium where City won it 1-0. So I'm going to take the City win up front at 1.5. I can see this being... I went for this last week in one of the games. It nearly came off for me. So I'm going to go again. Quite low odds, this. I think Tottenham keep the score down at half-time. It's going to be level. I think as the game goes on, City grow in strength, make some offensive changes and win it. Draw at half-time, City win is 4.5. Love that bet. Really taste the odds. And I think Spurs can defend this season, which makes it more likely. Go with a similar scoreline to February. City and under 2.5 goals is a really surprising 5. That's really good odds for a Man City game. Haaland anytime, 1.62. Bundle that with a City win. You'll make some money.
Well, actually, Abba is telling us that also he sees a narrow City win, total goals under 3, like a 2-1, for instance. Elijah is telling us it has 2-1 vibes. And David, curious to see Rodri and Reinders playing together. I guess we still have to wait a little bit to see Rodri fully fit. And talking, by the way, Tom, about great midfielders, you know that in Oddspedia we interviewed Claude Makelele recently. So we have an interview with him, an article about his thoughts about the Premier League and about his Chelsea. So you can read it actually in our blog. We are going to leave you the link below in case you are interested about a legend like Claude Makelele. And talking about legends, Tom Rennie, we are going to continue with our video. Bournemouth, Wolverhampton, Bournemouth 4-2. We had our doubts about the defense. Well, first game, 4 goals. Conceded, 𝐿𝐴 scored a brace. For a moment, it looks like Bournemouth could get a point at Anfield, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen also for Wolves. They didn't stand a chance against Man City. No 𝐿𝐿𝐴. We saw Larsen up front, but the team overall fell apart, especially in the midfield, Tom.
Yeah, they did. And I think it's going to be an ongoing thing with Wolves this season as it was last season. You know, the two central midfielders, the Brazilians, are good players, but they can't run. It goes back to my Man United point. It's my West Ham point. Can your midfielders run? If they can run, you've got a chance. If they can't run in this league, this time, you are stuffed. And like that's the positives, I think, from Bournemouth last week. If we start with them, Tyler Adams, fit, can run. Scott, fit, can run. Tavernier, fit, can run. Nobody did more sprints last week than David Brooks. He can run. Obviously, that leaves you then some space for 𝐸𝐸𝐿 and Evan Nielsen to work some magic and get you something from the game, which they very nearly did. So, and you saw the counter-attack for the second goal. They've got pace. They've got power. It's the Premier League. Do you have pace and power? If you don't have these things, get out of this league. You're going to go down. I'm on crazy pills, right? It's the Premier League. It's what the whole thing's about. So people seem to think they can tick-a-tacker their way around the Premier League in 2025. It's just so stupid. But Bournemouth aren't stupid. Iraola is not stupid. And he's got a really good pace and power team. Your point is well taken. I think that, you know, Liverpool going forward are always going to score a few goals. I think the 𝐿𝐿𝐴 goal was really bad defensively last week. And I think that 𝗛𝗏𝗏𝗀, and there was two other players involved. Forgive me, I forget who it was now. But like that group of Bournemouth players he burst through, they're all going to be embarrassed by that goal. And I think another week on, bit of training, getting to know each other, 𝗀𝐻𝐴 and 𝗛𝗏𝗏𝗀 and 𝗵𝐿𝐴, the goalkeeper, I expect better. They seem like okay players. Maybe not like amazing players, but I do think they seem better than I thought they might be last week. Let's put it that way going into the game. So, look, I think Bournemouth are big favourites to win this game. And I think they've got a stronger midfield, stronger offence and stronger defence. So if you've got all that, you're going to be favourites. In terms of Wolves, there's some talk this week that Newcastle might be looking at 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲 Strand Larsen if Isak does go in the transfer window. If that happens, we can knock them down to the Championship now because he is someone who can score 15 goals and they need someone to score 15 goals. Beyond that, there's very little quality in this team. Surprised by how bad 𝗵𝗵𝗏 was last week. I'd seen him previously for Wolves and thought he was quite good, the centre-half, but really struggled last week. And look, it was against the movement of Reinders and Man City. So harsh to judge him on that, but he was still bad in the game. So we have to take that. I think Bellegarde is a Championship player. I think Munetsi is a Championship player. And I think Gomez and Andre in central midfield, as mentioned. Lovely little technical players, a Premier League central midfield. That is not. They need a Caicedo type or a Rice type. Everyone does. But if you don't have it, you ain't going to do well in this league. And I think that's going to be the story of this game. So Bournemouth win. I think you've got to take that as your first bet at 1.8. That's really not too bad for a big favourite home win. I'm struggling to see where Wolverhampton Wanderers score a goal. And I think Bournemouth's defence will improve this week. Bournemouth win to 0, 3.25. I think we see a good defensive performance from the Cherries this week, considering the failures of last week. Got to look at the handicap here because Bournemouth can score and Wolves can't. Minus 1.5 is 2-0 or above. That's double your money. Love that. And also Antoine Semenyo, if he's still there. Stunned he's still there, by the way, considering how many players they've sold this summer. But if he's still there by Saturday, anytime goal scorer, double that with the Bournemouth win. There's money to be made.
Well, actually, we have Semenyo to score. Theo is telling us also Bournemouth are pretty strong at home, so I see value in the home win. So people agree with your points, Tom. Next game is Brentford Aston Villa. First game after the Thomas Frank era, and they lost 3-1 to Nottingham Forest. Usually, under the previous manager, they were very strong when they were playing at home. Now, let's see with this Aston Villa, kind of the things that we expected against Newcastle. It was a boring game. They didn't lose. At least both teams are kind of depleted this season. And up front, we saw Watkins and Tielemans. If they keep both players, Tom, I guess they can still win a lot of games in this Premier League.
Yeah, and I'd throw a few more in that group as well. I think Aston Villa still have a very, very strong starting 11. It's the squad depth, especially with Europa League, that's going to cost them. Because you basically don't have Champions League money, but you play a Champions League amount of games, right? So it's real tough to be in the Europa League for these teams, I think. Look, let's start with Brentford. Real trouble. They are in huge trouble this season, right? They have a manager who's never managed before. which, look, he might be great, and I wish him well, Keith Andrews, but he never managed before, replacing a club legend who'd basically been running the club with an iron fist for 6 years in Thomas Frank. I think they've lost their best 2 players in 𝐬𝐿, who's still there, but desperate to leave, and Brian Mbeumo now plays for Manchester United. And you saw that last week. Carvalho, Lewis Potter, Milambo, and Thiago. Not great. Fine, not great. That's a bottom 6 attack, and there's not a great deal of rotation in that attack as well. The central midfield, to lose Norgard and just move Jensen and Yarmouk in there. Not great, in my opinion. Fine, but not great. That's a group that's going to struggle. And beyond Nathan Collins, I don't see anyone here who is a player of a kind of Premier League value, if you see what I mean. Like, if they were to sell someone from that starting 11 last week, who would get more than 20 million? Collins. Beyond that, I don't think it'd be anybody. And if Collins were to go in this transfer window, I just can't see them being able to survive. There is a lack of creativity. There is a lack of offensive ability. There is a lack of midfield energy. And there's all sorts of problems for Brentford. They will win some home games, I guess, this season, but I think every game is going to be a real struggle. And if Villa are on it, Brentford will win it. They weren't on it last week. I think you make the right point there. I think that the 𝐿𝐴 sending off was really significant, because they then just have to go into containment mode. I think as the game grew on, I would have quite fancied Villa to go on to win it. But the issue right now for Aston Villa is total lack of depth. So I guess if he's fit, and that's always a big if, Pau Torres comes in to replace 𝐿𝐴 and he partners Mings, but never fit Pau Torres, so we'll see. Martinez comes back in goal to replace the sub-keeper who played last week. That, on paper, already makes them stronger. The trouble is when Ollie Watkins starts to flag in games, and he will start to flag, they turn to Donyell Malen, who simply isn't good enough. I'm sorry, he's just not good enough, Donyell Malen. The worst of the players they brought in January. Unfortunately for them, he's the one they signed on a permanent deal. Need someone to replace him. If they have a nullified Morgan Rogers, which Newcastle did well last week, there isn't really anyone else who can carry the ball upfield because they've sold Jacob Ramsey to Newcastle. That's a problem there. It's been a big whinge, quite rightly, of Villa fans all summer. They can't add to this team, and that has seen them look undercooked going into a game like this. But if they look undercooked, Brentford look raw, so you have to go for the Villa win at 2.1. Struggling to see who the goal scorer is for Brentford. With that being the case, Villa win to 0, brings you in at 4. Really, really very nice stat. I think Villa are very good at nicking the goal and closing the game down under Unai Emery. They got really good at that back end of last season. Villa under 2.5 is 5, and Villa by exactly 1 goal, 1-0, 2-1. Very likely scorelines, brings you in at 4, which I really like. So I think a tight, kind of ugly Aston Villa win here.
Well, Abai thinks the odds for Aston Villa are really good. Also, David is telling us that he will pass on this game, Villa to win the second half. For Theo and Tyson, you can't bet in Brentford with any confidence. Indeed, we still need to wait a little bit more to see where the team is going. Next game, at the same time, Burnley, Sunderland, both teams newly promoted into the Premier League, completely different start of the season. Sunderland, as we mentioned at the beginning, 3-0 at the Stadium of Light was the perfect start, the perfect comeback to the Premier League, really strong with their headers in the aerial duels. And Burnley, the opposite. Tom lost 3-0 to Tottenham. Somehow they are still favorites playing at home. Do you see Burnley, these favorites?
No, not really, but I think there's 2 elements that you bundle in. Number one is that their home record last season, the Championship, was really, really very good. They've not really lost a home game in a long time, so I think that counts. And also, as we saw with Sunderland last week, people overperform on their first game back. Over the years, we've seen Norwich beat Man City, is the one that always stands out to me a few years ago. Newly promoted teams in their first few games, that first couple of home games, if you win them, you stand a chance, because as the season goes on, you're going to stop winning home games. That always happens. So I think that bundled a bit into Sunderland last week as well. People have been going a bit over the top with how good they were. They were pretty average until they scored that first goal, but we'll get to that. In terms of Burnley, I think that they can't score goals. And if you have Foster up front, as they tried last time in the Premier League, he's not good enough to score 10-plus goals, I don't think, in the Premier League. That's a problem. And then you look across the rest of the side that played last week. Jaden Anthony came in from Bournemouth. Yeah, okay, fine. Not amazing. 𝗵𝗵𝗀 on the other side, fine, not amazing. And then what else have you got? How are you going to create? If they go with, 3 at the back, which you kind of have to if Kyle Walker's going to play, that nullifies any sort of offensive threat. I'm struggling to see the creativity at the moment. Maybe it's because my first viewing of what this team is going to be was last week. You start looking at 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝗲𝗄 off the bench. I don't know. I'm not seeing enough quality here going forward. Maybe to nick a goal, maybe to have a huge performance in this one and win it. But I'm struggling to see Burnley scoring any more than like 1 or 2 goals in a game. And look, doesn't happen that often, I guess. But that first goal, I just don't see where it's going to come from. He has got to change this team from a really defensive team, Scott Parker, into a team that have got better balance. And he's lost his best players from last season in Brownhill and the goalkeeper and in the centre after Marseille. You lose these guys. I don't know. I think you're in massive trouble. And I'm not going to bet on them to win at any point soon. We'll see how they get on this weekend, but certainly not this weekend. In terms of Sunderland, look, I think the new signings, they made sense against a West Ham team that just played so well into a trap being set by Sunderland, Regis Lebris, the manager, right? Xhaka's come in, played really well in this game, but he hasn't got legs. Alongside him, Diarra and Siddiqui have legs. It's not that hard. Have pace and power. Do you have pace and power? It's insane to me, right? And like Sunderland, smart. They were like, what do we got? We've got Granit Xhaka. Oh, that's good. Can he run? No. Okay, let's get players who can run next to him. Boom. There's your Premier League midfield. Just simple stuff, right? Diarra and Siddiqui were fantastic last week, got moving, got right stuck into Guido Rodriguez and Ward-Prowse and whoever else West Ham tried in midfield and looked fantastic. Mayenda was great up front. I thought the wingers weren't amazing in the game, but Reynaldo and 𝐿𝐴 on both sides kept crossing the ball, and that's where the goals come from. Cross into the box, win the header. I don't think Burnley's defence will be as pathetic and pitiful and weak as West Ham's back three, so I think it'll be more of a battle this week, but they will get physical, they will try and cross the ball, and I think they will nick this game. And at those odds, I think you've got to take it. 3.4. That is worth a punt of anybody's money on Sunderland to win. I don't know why, but I just think there's going to be goals in this game. I think when they go up Sunderland, I think Burnley, uncharacteristically, will need to start chasing the game. That is not something Burnley have done under Scott Parker. That makes the game get ragged. And I actually think Sunderland might win quite convincingly here. So it's a bit bold, being as we've only really seen this brand new team once. But Sunderland and over 1.5 goals in the match is 4.33. I just think there'll be at least 2 Sunderland goals. And I'm struggling to see a Burnley. And those odds, irresistible to me.
Indeed. Well, Marco is going for a cautious approach, which is draw no bet for Sunderland, since they are the underdog. Sunderland was so needed in the Premier League. They have a good team. 𝗵𝗿 is telling us, you remember once upon a time, it was the Turf Moor effect. It was so difficult to win at Burnley ground. It didn't happen last time. They were in the Premier League, of course. Yeah. And Tom is not backing also this Turf Moor effect. Perhaps when it's winter time, it's raining, and so on. Well, and the third team that got promoted this season was Leeds, playing at the Emirates. Also great start for Leeds, because I think it's these kind of games that are going towards 0-0. Probably everyone is going to be happy, and somehow you get 3 points. So it's the perfect start for Leeds. And for Arsenal, they didn't play great, to say the least, at Old Trafford. But, well, they got the 3 points because Man United goalkeeper is worse than Arsenal one. And also we saw Gyökeres. No one was convinced about his performance. It was a so-so game for Arsenal, but still, Tom, if you are not playing well and you get the 3 points, set pieces, 1-0 is the same old Arsenal, it looks like.
Yeah, it was. And they've got a near-perfect squad and a near-perfect game plan. They've come second 3 years in a row, so I don't think they needed, like, a great big revolution. They just needed to get a bit better in winning games against big opponents when just 1 goal was necessary. And they did that last week. If you still think United are a big opponent, they got their job done really effectively. So I don't think you can give too much criticism. And I think the best thing that could possibly have happened to Arsenal has happened this week, and that's 𝐿𝐴𝗵𝗿 has got injured. And because of that, they decided to move on 𝗵𝗿𝗄. And that is incredible. Incredible move. What a moment. I don't think Gabriel... Go on, sorry.
From Tottenham.
Yeah. Classic transfer hijack. Classic. Like, Gabriel Martinelli's fine. Okay? He is a fine footballer. I don't want to slag him off too much. But do you win the league with Martinelli as your starting left winger? To my opinion, you don't. With 𝗵𝗵𝗄, he can take Martinelli's position. He can also cover for 𝗛𝗏𝗏. And you saw last week, Martin 𝗛𝗏𝗏, and we mentioned this before the game, really great player. But if he's not on it, if his through balls aren't working, if he's struggling in the game, there is no one else in the Arsenal team who can take that role. 𝗛𝗏 comes in, not for this weekend, but now they have. That's maybe what was missing. Like, it's all there. It's another £300 million summer for Arsenal, by the way. So he spent like £1 billion, Mikel Arteta, to try and be Premier League champion across a few summers. So kind of now or never, really, for him. But look, they look great. They look perfect. I don't really make any changes to my prediction from last week that they should win the league. I don't think they will, but they should. Saliba Gabriel's great. Fullbacks are great. Midfield's great. Got depth. I think 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐳, struggled last week, but I think in terms of being a battering ram away from home, did a perfectly fine job. So they're big favourites to win this. In terms of Leeds, the game went pretty much exactly as we predicted last week, beyond the fact that Leeds won 1-0 and not Everton. We went under, we went probably draw, and it was heading towards my second bet last week until one of the worst penalties I've seen for a while was given. Like, it's just, I'm sorry, no. That's not handball. You can't give that as handball. It should have been rectified by VAR. It was given, I think, by the linesman. His arms are behind his back and his body's moving towards the ball. He has not made himself bigger because his arms were behind his back. So he could not have done it. It wasn't handball. It should not have been given. But look, it was in the end. Did Leeds deserve to win? Yeah, maybe. I don't think football works like that. I kind of hate it when people say things like that. But they were kind of the better team. But of course they were. It was their first game back in the Premier League against kind of mid-table fodder who could potentially struggle, Everton. So of course they were good in that game. I still think there's issues with Leeds. Don't like the central defensive pairing of Struijk and Rodon. I think they will struggle. Don't like the midfield of Ampadu, Stack, and Tanaka. I think, look, people are going wild about Stack in midfield because he'll run around. Yeah, okay. We'll see when the games get tougher than that. But I think Ampadu has fouled repeatedly in the Premier League. So, we'll see how that works out. But not someone I'd be looking to buy, I think. And up front, 𝗵𝗏𝗏 will miss chances. Gnonto and James inconsistent. So front and back, there's some issues there. I still think they're going to be in the bottom 4, bottom 5. I'd still back Leeds to go down as things stand. But look, great day to start the season. And this game, I think it'll be a rude awakening. I think Arsenal's attack will rip Leeds to shreds, and I think they will win quite convincingly. So take the Arsenal win at 1.3. Arsenal win to 0, which came in last week. I'm going to keep backing it all season at 2.1. And then look at your handicaps. Minus 2.5 is 3. Minus 3.5 is 5.5. I would take the minus 2.5 and double your money. Throw in something else in there, maybe a to 0. That'll make some serious money if you put 3 or 4 bets on this game together. But look at Arsenal, at least by 2. Probably by 3, and to win without conceding. Big Gunners win here.
All right. Well, Arsenal to win, but out of the ACCA, Tyson is saying, of course, the money is not worth. The odds are very low. David, Arsenal played for so long without a proper striker. They just need time. Someone was criticizing 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐳 for touching his hair. He can touch his hair. What's the problem? He's a blonde Swedish guy. He's able to do that. I can't. Tom, let's go to the next game on Sunday. This one is Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest. Well, of course, a lot of rumors, as you were saying, with Eze leaving the club, going to North London, from South London to North London. But anyway, great start of the season for Crystal Palace. A draw at the Stamford Bridge is good. They won the Community Shield. They ended the last season winning the FA Cup. So it's a great project. They are playing in Europe. Be careful also today. Just take this in consideration. And Forest, also good start. Tom, you always mentioned Chris Wood, and he scored a brace. And we saw some minutes of Igor Jesus actually replacing Wood.
Yeah, they've bought well, Forest. They bought a lot again, Forest, and maybe at some point they'll be done by FFP, but they seem to keep skirting that. So, we'll see how that goes. Look, let's start with Crystal Palace. To lose 𝗵𝗵𝗄𝐴 is catastrophic, and I think we're at the point now where we can say he's going to be gone. Maybe he's going to have played on Thursday. We're recording this before the game, so he maybe played a goodbye game at Selhurst on Thursday in the Conference League, a competition they should do well in. But to lose him, there's some good things about Palace. Gay, Lacroix, and Richards can all defend, which helps when you're a back three. Munoz and Mitchell give good balance. I have doubts about Hughes and Morton in midfield, but look, played well last week. Maybe Wharton's got more pace and power than I think, and Will Hughes doing it. I mean, look, credit to him for sticking around the Premier League for so long. But Ezra's the class player. And to lose him the summer after losing Elise, there's some talk the game might be going this window as well. there's no way anyone they bring in, there's some talk about 𝗵𝗵𝗀 of Leicester, whatever, they ain't going to be able to cover for 𝗵𝗵𝗀𝐻𝐿, who is a brilliant footballer, who is, he didn't single-handedly deliver the FA Cup, but without him, I don't think they win it. So to lose him is going to be awful, and I expect him to be gone by this game. And that changes my view on things, because their overall form at home is really very good. Their last run of 10 games, back end of last and start of this, against really tough opponents, very, very good. They don't concede many goals. But without him, I fear for them this season, not in terms of relegation or anything, but I don't think the top 10 finish, the European finish, the trophies are going to continue. But we shall see. But that's the big concern for me. In terms of Forest, magnificent last week. They haven't changed a thing. They've changed absolutely nothing. And why would they? The only question was, would they be able to continue playing with the same power they did last season? And they did. First half an hour against Brentford last week, they just overpowered them. Hudson-Odoi and Ndoi and Gibbs-White running at you terrified them. Aina and Williams on the overlap suddenly gives you 5 in attack. And Chris Wood, when the chance comes, he kept on taking it. And there was an incredible through ball as well from Elliot Anderson last week. First time, it was a tackle/pass into the path of Wood, who went on to score. Pass of the season. Absolutely fantastic. So they have 2 midfielders who make this system work, which is Anderson and 𝗀𝗏𝗏. Pace and power. The pace and power league, guys. Like, they have pace and power in midfield. And they add some finesse to that with Gibbs-White. Works fantastically well. And I've got to make them favourites to win this game because of the 𝐬𝐿 factor and the pace and power factor. Forest win at W money. I'm surprised by that. 3.2. So you've got to take that. And I think that's really good. 1-0 on its own is 9. This game's been quite tight over the years. It was a really drab 0-0, I think, last season between the two. Murillo nearly scored in it. So I think it'll be quite similar to that, but take a Forest win by 1-0 brings you in at a really nice 9. And Forest under 2.5 goals is 6. I think this is the moment Palace come crashing back down to earth. And Forest do their classic away from home, sit deep, smash you on the break format. I think it's a classic Forest win.
Okay, well, everyone agrees here. What is going on this season? Without 𝐬𝐿, Forest to win, Nottingham Forest to win with 𝐬𝐿 sold and play midweek in Europe. Forest will punish them on Sunday. Looks only Marco Polo is going for the draw in this game. Next one, probably this is going to be a tough one to watch. Everton, Brighton. Everton, as we said, they should have drew against Leeds, but they didn't. They lost because of that penalty. And Brighton, the game against Fulham, scream, draw, Tom. It was a draw, low scoring affair. This one also another draw, not many goals, something like this. Again, to avoid watching, just put in some Batman Begins, perhaps.
No, I'd watch it because it's the first ever game at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. There's going to be 60,000 people at this brand new stadium, which I haven't seen it since it was like 30% constructed. Last time I was down at the Albert Docks. And it looks amazing on TV. I'm really looking forward to going. Not watching this team particularly, but the stadium, it looks fantastic. Look, I think that Everton showed us last week who they remain. They played 3 centre-halves and a winger at the back this week. I think Mykolenko's still going to be out, so that gives them a kind of lack of balance. I might put Dwight McNeil back in the back line to give some sort of creativity and move Garner back into midfield. That's probably what I would do. We'll see what Moyes does. But a couple short. But I do think if you can have a 3 behind the striker of Ndai, Dewsbury Hall, and I would bring Grealish in, that's creative. There's some pizzazz there. And if they get going, Everton, that 3 could really be a lot of fun this season. We didn't see it last week. 𝐿𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐜 started, who's fine himself. But I do think that could potentially be a really fun group behind a striker. They need a striker. Like, Beto isn't good enough. He might go on a little run every now and then, but he's not good enough to be a Premier League centre-forward. That's going to be a big issue. And if they can't get the creativity from lower midfield, being a Rebbenham, Gay, or Garner, depending on who's in there, that's where some Everton sort of issues start, but they'll be fine this season. There are a couple short, but I think they'll bring them in. In terms of Brighton, I think it was a really interesting game last week against Fulham. I think both teams look pretty even, which is not a compliment to Brighton, considering Fulham have signed nobody and look pretty undercooked to me at the moment, Fulham, actually. Mitoma's a class act. O'Reilly was great in midfield. Minte on the other side is really, really good, like them. Balabre's fantastic. I have my doubts about Ayari in midfield, but if next to Balabre, I think that's absolutely fine. I don't know. I just think Brighton, they're going to win one, lose one, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. I think that's been kind of balance of their season. There's every chance they go there, score the first goal and shut this game down. I think first goal is going to be absolutely crucial in this game. But I think it's going to be very tight, very taut. It's whether Everton can get that second goal. If they get it, they go on to win it, because I struggle to see either team scoring 2 goals in this game. There's a real lack of spark in those first 90 minutes from both teams. So screams draw at the Hill Dickinson at 3.5. Absolutely take that. Find the 2 most popular draw score lines, 0-0 and 1-1. Bundle them together at a really enticing 4.33. If you're picking a winner, for me, it will be Brighton in a low-scoring game. And so Brighton under 2.5 goals is 5. Brighton win low scoring, or a draw with no more than a goal apiece.
Well, convincing Everton win here, we disagree, actually. Going for Everton, since they are playing in the new stadium, Everton also draw no bet. They are the underdog for this game. And talking about Fulham is our next game, Fulham Man United. That you mentioned you are not inspired by Fulham this season. Well, they got a point thanks to the equalizer in the very last minute from 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗀. But of course, we have to talk about Man United. They lost, as most of the people expected. Probably they played better than most also expected against Arsenal. At the end was a mistake by the goalkeeper, by Indir, perhaps a fall. Some people are saying probably just a mistake. And we saw 𝐿𝐭𝐴, we saw 𝗵𝗼𝗀 starting. We only saw 30 minutes from Benjamin Sesko. Tom, did you like Man United against Arsenal?
Yeah, I did, actually. I think that 𝐿𝐭𝐴 and 𝗵𝗼𝗀 are going to be a lot of fun. And I think you saw a couple of times last week when Arsenal pressed high and United won the ball back, they looked up, and suddenly there's 2 options up there. And there was a few really interesting moments where suddenly United were 2-on-2 against the Arsenal defence. That just wasn't happening last season with whomever they put into that front group. I thought the Mount inclusion was interesting because a lot of teams are doing that 2 Mavericks and 1 workhorse thing as a front 3, as opposed to 2 wingers and a big striker. And I'm intrigued to see how that balance works and whether Benjamin Šeško comes in for a game like this or whether they continue with Mason Mount. If they go with Šeško, I think you see last week is what they were doing against big teams, better teams. If they go with Mason Mount, that's part of the vision of Ruben Amorim for this front group. So that's going to be really interesting. I think that the midfield is still a problem. You ain't going to get more than 60 minutes out of Casemiro. That's long established, but they can't get rid of him. His wages are massive. He doesn't want to go. I think 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗀, when he came on, was poor. He's certainly not set the world alight since coming into Manchester United. And I think Bruno Fernandes wanders, tries to create, and suddenly there's big holes in that central midfield for Man United. Big problems for them. I think 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗀 had some good moments. Dalot had some good moments, but I don't consider either to be particularly top quality. And I think Yoro and Shaw struggled at points last week. De Ligt, I thought, was very, very good. Goalkeeper, does Onana come back in if he's fit? I think he probably does. But is that a particular upgrade on 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗀? Judging by the amount of mistakes he's made, probably not. But 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗀 was poor last week. Was there a foul? Yeah, maybe. You could convince me there was a foul in the penalty area. Maybe on the goalkeeper, maybe on one of the defenders. But you've also got to be strong. Get out. Get the punch. You're the goalkeeper. Take care of the situation. And he was weak. And you can't do that in the Premier League. If you're weak in that sort of area, then you're going to get caught out, especially by a team like Arsenal, who we know bully you in the penalty area. So lots to like about Man United. Still not the finished article. I think Ahmad should come in for Dalot. I think that's really crucial for their season. I would start Šeško. I think they'll go with Mount. We'll see how that plays out. In terms of Fulham, I won't do too much more on them, but I do think there are a couple of players short. I think that the setup is fine. I think beyond King, Josh King in kind of number 10, there's a real lack of creativity. And I think taking off Wilson to bring on Traore or taking off 𝗻𝗁𝗏 to bring on Traore as last season, I think they'll get found out at some point doing that. I think the Rodrigo Muniz-Jimenez thing worked fine last week with Rodrigo Muniz scoring that equaliser. But again, can we count on 10 goals each from both of those? Maybe. I think maybe I would be looking to move one on. I think Muniz gets a new contract, but I'd maybe have brought in a maybe younger player in that group. We'll see how that goes. Defensively too, I thought 𝗵𝗏𝗏 was good last week. I thought Anderson was good last week. I thought Leno was good, the goalkeeper. Fulham are the same as last season. Nothing's really changed. They are capable of a decent performance and every chance they can win this game, but they have struggled in this game for kind of inexplicable reasons. Like they've been better than United for a lot of years and yet have struggled in this match at home. 1-0 losses in the last couple of times they played him at Craven Cottage. They have done all right at Old Trafford, but they have just struggled here. And I just kind of think it'll be the same. I think Fulham in this game have some sort of mental block. And I think you have to go for a Manchester United win. Look, don't discount the draw at 3.65. I think these teams are pretty even in a lot of ways. So sure, I would be looking at that. But take a low-scoring Manchester United win, 2.22 for just a Man U win on its own. Under 1.5 goals and a Man U win is 8.5. Really astounding considering it feels like it might well happen. And look at 𝐿𝐵𝐼𝐻 𝐶𝐭 anytime. He's fantastic. He will score goals this season. Add that to your win and you'll double your money.
Well, Theo is going for 𝐶𝐿 actually to score his first ever Premier League goal. Man United wins for 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲. Remember when Man United to win was like 1.5, 1.6. Now first away game of the season and 2.2 in the pitch in Craven Cottage. So it's not that difficult stadium, but the bookies, of course, like everyone else, don't trust Man United. And for Monday, we have another great game. Two teams playing Champions League this season. Newcastle, Liverpool, with Isak, of course, as a big name in the picture. Still not training for Newcastle. Still couldn't join Liverpool or any other team. Everyone is saying that he's not really professional, just not training, just not working for his team. Anyway, of course, Newcastle without a number 9, they are struggling and they couldn't score a single goal against Aston Villa. We saw up front Elanga, Gordon and Barnes. And on the other hand, we have Liverpool conceding probably too many goals in this start of the season. 2 against Bournemouth, 2 against Crystal Palace in the Community Shield, but also scoring plenty. And probably no one expected 𝐻𝐿𝐴 to be that good so early, Tom, so soon.
Yeah, which is why it's weird. They seem to be chasing Isak so much, which they are. And that's caused this ridiculous situation, including Isak's statement following the PFA dinner on Tuesday. I mean, look, watching Newcastle last week, what were they missing? They were missing their world-class striker. I mean, it just, it's pretty basic. Anyone could have seen that last week. There were moments that 𝐿anga and Gordon and Barnes looked good. There were moments the midfield three of Tonali, Joe Linton and Bruno Guimaraes showed the power we know they have. But when the ball, it goes through in that 5th minute or something like that, it went through to 𝐿anga. How desperate was everyone to see Alexander Isak on that ball and not 𝐿anga? With all due respect to Anthony 𝐿anga, who's a good player, he is not Alexander Isak. There's almost no one in world football that currently is Alexander Isak. So to not have him, it's catastrophic. And not only that, because they haven't sold him, they missed out on 𝐿𝐴𝐻. They missed out on 𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻. They missed out on anyone that might have been available this summer. So what you do now, when he does go, and I think he will go this window, because I don't see any kind of way out of this mess without doing that, I think you've got problems, Newcastle. Look, not massive problems, but we're talking about a team that are trying to qualify to the top 4 here. And without the goal scorer for the first 4 or 5 months, it will cost them, I think, as the season goes on. So, look, that's a massive issue. Beyond that, I think defensively, I still have concerns about 𝐿𝐴 and Burn. They're not getting any younger. The movement's not great from the pair. Sven Botman remains continually unavailable for them, or at least not fully fit. And there's a massive lack of depth. Again, a bit like Villa last week where they played. There was a huge lack of depth in this squad. They are 5 or 6 players short of a squad the size of even Man United, let alone someone like Chelsea who they're trying to compete against, who just buy 7,000 players, even buy players for Strasbourg who become Chelsea players, right? So there's your issue for Newcastle. Team looks fine. Base looks fine. No Isak. That's problems. In terms of Liverpool, the offense was as good as we predicted last week. Some of the movement from Florian Wirtz, Mo Salah and Gakpo and 𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻, brilliant. 𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻, miles better, miles nearer to the finished article. I think, you mentioned it earlier on. We thought might be a player that would grow into the position, grow into the team, and that still might be true. But he looked incredible, absolutely incredible. In both games he's played for Liverpool, looks really, really very good. Szoboszlai, McAllister in midfield, might have some doubts about that. I'd probably bring in Ryan Gravenberch from McAllister. Luxury problem to have. And then we saw a few issues again, as we saw in the Community Shield. Virgil van Dijk is slowing. He is slowing and slowing and slowing. 𝐼𝐿𝐴 is error-prone. Not to the level of like a crap West Ham defender, but certainly of a defender who is like Champions League title winning, right? There's problems there. 𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻 and Frimpong do not provide the cover that Andy Robertson used to give. And so there are issues there defensively. I think they've got to bring in another centre-half. And they've got to also be looking at Andy Robertson coming in for tougher games to replace 𝗀𝐿𝐴 and some cover at fullback as well. I guess Conor Bradley, when fit, would be that for Frimpong in terms of being more defensive. So those are my concerns. I think they will concede goals, and I can see them conceding goals in this game. But you have to take Liverpool win because they've got this incredible front line, and right now Newcastle do not. Liverpool win is 2.05. Both teams will score in this game. I can just feel it. It's going to be harem. It's going to be scare 'em. It's going to be goals. It's going to be basketball. It's going to be well worth a watch in this quite angry Isak derby on Monday Night Football. Liverpool and both teams to score is 3.25. Then pick out a couple of players. Last week they scored. I can see them doing it again. Salah anytime. 𝗀𝐿𝐴 anytime. Bundle that with a Liverpool win, and you're going to double your money.
Okay, well, the fixtures this week are very tight, but still we have 𝐬𝐿𝐴 going for correct score 2-0 for Liverpool, total goals under 3. In this one, someone was releasing the hashtag Free Isak for this game. That Chiesa moment, David is telling us, everyone forgets, even me, about Federico Chiesa, but he could be a good player. Why not? Yeah. He was a good player once upon a time. Well, guys, this is it for the Premier League Match Day 2, a shorter video than last week. Thank you, Tom, but still all your knowledge, all your wisdom in one video. So, guys, remember that you can still post your tips in Oddspedia and win some money. We have some tipster competitions going on, win up to €1,000. And absolutely for free, completely for free. So you just have to sign up and post your tips. This is it. And also we have Rivals, a feature by Oddspedia where you can create your own tipster competitions or just join a competition that was created by someone else. Tom, last week, we nailed the international ACCA thanks in part to your safe bet. So let's go again with your safe bet.
Yeah, I really mulled this over this week. There's two that I think will come in. I'm going to take Man City to win over Tottenham at 1.44. Really surprising odds, actually, for Man City at home. You don't normally get that for a safe bet. I was looking at Chelsea, but Chelsea at 1.62 over West Ham. Maybe there's going to be a reaction from West Ham. That's my only doubt. Plus, Chelsea struggled last week. I think Chelsea still win convincingly. But in terms of my own money, I would normally bet the house on Man City, so I am.
Okay, then your ACCA?
My 3-team ACCA, I took City out of it because, again, they were the biggest favourites of the week. My 3-team ACCA is Chelsea to win over West Ham, which I do think they will. Fulham and Man United to win. That's going to be a narrow victory. And Liverpool in there as well. So some risk in this here. 6.95. Really interesting for these 3 teams to win. That's a little tickle, that. That's not a guarantee, but I really like it.
Really high odds. Of course, you can play draw no bet, and if there is a draw, you get your money back, and it's safer with lower odds. Thank you, Tom. Thanks, everyone, for watching. See you next week. Bye.